I don't care what you're doing. Come and get me. What the?
You can't do that.
Whoa! Don't make me bust you up, man!
I think more importantly, it was a cultural phenomenon. People responded to it somehow psychologically. The Terminator represented something to people, a kind of a dark side of the human psyche, people wanting to have that fantasy of being totally stripped of all moral constraints and being able to do exactly what they wanted to do whenever they wanted to do it.
The Terminator has seeped its way into the culture like very few films can. Besides being a perfectly written sci-fi action thriller that makes the most of its relatively small budget, it was a film that turned its two creative centers, James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger, into household names. The film does a lot of things right. It's got a super compelling premise. A soldier from a bleak dystopian future controlled by cyborgs comes back in time to protect the mother whose son will go on to lead the resistance against the cyborgs. Its script is the epitome of great screenwriting, in which there is virtually no fat, every scene distilled down to its functional essence, with its complex expositional backstory being buried amongst the action sequences to keep the pace from stagnating. It has strong, well-defined characters. The Terminator was perfectly embodied by Arnold Schwarzenegger, instantly creating an iconic, endlessly stereotyped cultural phenomenon. Kyle Reese is strong, resourceful, but tender enough to make you care about his mission and his relationship with Sarah. And Sarah has a satisfying arc in which her meek, timid exterior is slowly stripped away to reveal the tough, hard-as-nails interior, which had been there all along. It's a textbook example of high-concept filmmaking done right. But what about the deeper meanings of the Terminator? Let's go beyond the surface-level platitudes and try to understand why it latched on with such fervor and had such staying power in the culture. On the surface, most of the things that work about the Terminator work for other films too, but those films don't connect to audiences in the same way. What is it about this film that made the difference? Personally, I think it has a lot to do with what the film's writer and director James Cameron had to say about the dark side of the human psyche, how the Terminator represented a kind of fantasy role play for audiences who have these dark tendencies buried deep in their subconscious. Movies are often seen as wish fulfillment, an escape from reality. But what are people escaping from? Well, it's the daily grind of life, the word grind being key, since our basic way of life demands sacrificing time and energy to make our institutions and economic outlets function. But many people detest this way of life. They hate their jobs, they hate their employers, and often they hate their own families. Many people fantasize about killing their boss or robbing a bank, any activity that allows their darker nature to become unshackled from the social demands of human decency. Most people don't consciously want to do bad things, but that doesn't mean those primal desires don't exist. It's one thing to resist them. It's another thing entirely to pretend they don't exist. The Terminator, I suspect, woke these desires in people, giving them a kind of cathartic release while watching the film. While Cameron's film was released in the 80s, it was kind of prophetic in predicting a trend that would become commonplace in American cinema in the late 90s. Three popular films that best represent this trend were Office Space.
The thing is, Bob, it's not that I'm lazy. It's that I just don't care. I don't like my job, and I don't think I'm gonna go anymore.
Fight Club.
Why do you think I blew up your condo?
What?
Hitting bottom isn't a weekend retreat. It's not a goddamn seminar. Stop trying to control everything and just let go.
And American Beauty.
My job consists of basically masking my contempt for the assholes in charge and at least once a day retiring to the men's room so I can jerk off. Well, I fantasized about a life that doesn't so closely resemble hell. Well, you obviously have no interest in saving yourself.
These films expanded on the subtextual idea in Cameron's earlier film, and made it less subtext and more text. But instead of being a dark human fantasy involving murder, it took on more existential preoccupations about oppression, freedom, and what it was to be human. Cameron's original idea for the Terminator was of a thinner, more physically diminutive infiltration unit that could easily blend into a crowd and silently go in for the kill. Luckily, Schwarzenegger, who was at first thought of for the hero Kyle Reese, instinctively lobbied for the Terminator role. His and Cameron's instinct proved to be extraordinarily fortunate for the movie, and perhaps on some level they realized the exciting visual possibilities of Schwarzenegger's exaggerated physicality, which trumped the need for any strategic accuracy or realism. This was a sci-fi action thriller after all, not a militaristic drama. The Jungian idea of the shadow, the neglected part of the human subconscious, where all the horrible things a person won't accept as their own desires, violence, mayhem, destructive tendencies, even murder, loomed large in Cameron's cybernetic creation. Even Schwarzenegger's exaggerated hulking physicality acted as a kind of visual externalization of this idea, the unstoppable human id in the most perfect physical form imaginable. These deeper subtextual ideas form a basis for the Terminator's incredible cultural explosion. Even the opening credits reinforce the idea that the audience is being welcomed to identify with the Terminator. The cold, steely intersecting of shapes that resemble letters in a smooth, almost hypnotic fashion, as if to make the audience highly suggestible to whatever information the filmmakers want to impart. This opens us up to the only other thing we see on screen, the titles, which are in the style of computerized text. This is our first clue that we're being asked to see this movie through the eyes of the Terminator. And the first major character we see is not Kyle Reese, the hero, but the Terminator. And notice the difference between their two styles of entrance into this time period. The Terminator is presented as larger than life, and without any physical pain from all the electricity, as a result of time travel. And notice the thumping beat of the soundtrack, which sounds suspiciously like a heartbeat. But more consistent and powerful. And since he looks human, all this leads to the idea that the Terminator could very well be the perfect human, the physical personification of absolute freedom. This is contrasted with Kyle Reese's entrance, which is quite different. Instead of making a smooth transition through time, his journey is one of absolute agony and confusion, something no audience member would want to experience. This contrast is interesting as it relates to the current state of the superhero genre, with its hulking, physically perfect, and idealized heroes. The Terminator is very much keeping in line with this. Yes, the Marvel heroes do have faults and emotional challenges, but this only reinforces the idea that the Terminator is the superior physical specimen.
You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? Perfect organism. Its structural perfection is matched only by its hostility.
You admire it.
I admire its purity. A survivor. Unclouded by conscience, remorse, or delusions of morality.
Faced with a group of punks, the Terminator is unfazed, and simply takes what he needs without a moment's hesitation. These punks are an interesting choice by Cameron, since he could have easily shown the Terminator terrorizing innocents for the close. But these punks are people anyone in the audience would enjoy seeing dispatched. Another nod in the direction of the Terminator, providing wish fulfillment for the audience. And while Kyle Reese must evade and hide from the police, we see no such trouble for the Terminator, who not only just takes what he wants with ease, he gets away scot-free without the threat of law enforcement. In fact, when the Terminator goes after Sarah, who's in police custody, he just barrels through an entire station full of cops, as if they were nothing. The Terminator is even presented as a sort of apparition at one point. During the first chase scene with Reese and Sarah, the Terminator survives a horrific car crash, and just seems to vanish afterward. Wouldn't we all like to survive horrific events and just vanish whenever we pleased? One of the key aspects of Carl Jung's idea of the shadow is the inevitable confrontation with this dark subconscious entity. The shadow personifies everything that the subject refuses to acknowledge about himself, he wrote. This is the main thematic thrust of the Terminator. The idea that Sarah is forced out of her boring, humdrum, normal existence, and forced to confront things about herself that she does not want to acknowledge. That she's bad at multitasking.
Okay, who gets the burly beef?
I ordered barbecue beef. I think that's mine, but I didn't order
gets
fries.
the barbecue beef. Mine's the chili beef deluxe. Okay, who gets the burly beef?
Miss, we're ready to order now.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good. I'm so sorry.
This isn't real leather, is it?
That she's lazy.
Ginger, have you seen Pugsley?
No, not lately. Did you check messages?
I thought you did.
That she can't maintain a romantic relationship.
Hi, Sarah. Dan Morsky. Something's come up, and it looks like I won't be able to make it tonight. Just can't get out of it. Really sorry. I'll make it up to you. Call you in a day or so, okay? Sorry. Bye.
That she is incapable of defending herself.
I'm at this place on Pico Boulevard called Tech Noir. I'm really scared. I
think that there's somebody after me.
That she has no survival instincts.
Are you sure you have the right person?
I'm sure.
Come on, do I look like the mother of the future? I mean, am I tough? Organized? I can't even balance my checkbook.
All of these assumptions are of course wrong, and the Terminator cyborg represents this lingering darkness she refuses to deal with, but is inevitably forced to.
We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't.
Fight Club is the most direct descendant of this idea, with the narrator being forced out of his comfortable, safe, but ultimately boring and unfulfilling existence by his own shadow, Tyler Durden. The dark deeds and scary ideas created by Project Mayhem are the narrator's own path to freedom. But this freedom comes at a cost. The mayhem and destruction he caused was only because of his unwillingness to acknowledge that he had these desires in the first place, so they took on the form of Tyler Durden to force his hand. It's the narrator's resistance that makes Durden stronger, and ultimately more destructive. But, like many dark things, the Terminator turns out to be the catalyst that unshackles Sarah from her chains and frees her. She learns toughness, responsibility, emotional connectedness, and how to be a survivor. And maybe most importantly of all, she begins to move beyond her own individual bubble of existence and starts taking responsibility for the ills of the world at large. She becomes a superwoman, and only because she was able to confront and embrace these frightening ideas that she saw as her shadow. The thing about the Jungian shadow is that it is not the entity that scares us, but more so the idea that we must move beyond our comfort zone into something that feels alien to us. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the like and subscribe button, as I'll be posting more content in the future. Thanks for watching.